And what you're seeing now in the internet space, if you just do a search on XMPP, there's a huge jump in the number of sites that are actually using XMPP. Matter of fact, there was just clearly 2 days ago, there was an announcement basically that someone has implemented Google Wave, which by the way is based on XMPP as a server, and there's also eJabberD and things like that. So as we start thinking about this, you and I have been not only meeting together and interacting in a very different way, okay, and Dan clearly is seeing and hearing us, but it's also we can start making very different types of decisions. So rather than go through slide by slide by slide with you, what we're going to do is actually show you Blue Spruce running. And first thing that we're going to do in a series of demonstrations is walk you through one that we did for our own internal corporate office. And it's about relocating an employee. And in our case, since Dan lives in New York, I live in Boston, we picked the absolute opposite corner and want to move to Anchorage, Alaska. But it can be any state for that matter. So Dan, let's move to real estate. So what we're really doing is, think about this in motion. We're actually going through a whole series of different demonstrations. And what we're going to do is end up on a medical demonstration where two radiologists can actually interact with one another. So in this demo, there's a couple of things that are happening. Okay? First things first. As you saw, I just basically went to this. Dan had already decided that he wanted to go to Alaska, a specific postal code, and I joined and found out the information that's going on right then and there. Now, what's really going on this is we actually have all of these widgets all wired together through a framework called Open Ajax Hub. Okay, and it's an organization, the source code is available for free, and basically allows you to take different widget types and marry them together, whether it be a Google gadget or Microsoft gadget, or it could be a YUI, confabulator, etc. You can wire all of these things together. One of the things that you're seeing is, we can change terrain. I can go to map view. Dan can, move the map. I can say I don't want to go there. I'd rather go to that address. So you can see what's been going on, okay? And let's say you don't like this one, we can go to this one. Now, what's happening under the covers here? Really important things. We've taken a widget from Trulia, actually two widgets from Trulia, San Francisco-based company that does just focus on real estate. And we've taken another widget from Zillow, wired these together with a call out to Google Maps, and actually bring all of this together for actually to show you. Now, one of the interesting things is that, it's very, very nice to start seeing this kind of view, but real estate people in general, you have to watch. So when you start thinking about these are the first three houses, Dan and I are moving things around, and you can start looking at, this house is actually right by a landing strip. Now, by the way, there's two landing strips in Anchorage, and they're both right next to each other. So you're finding that, houses here may not be the best of choices. And I'm doing this all remotely. And by the way, if Dan is our broker, Dan is, pretty slimy, actually. So this is the beginnings of...
Good deal, David.
I can sell your wares anywhere. So what we'll do now is go into a very different demonstration that Dan worked on with Thomson Reuters. And we'll let Dan walk through the whole thing with you. Okay. And I'll show you the Grand Tetons there. So this whole discussion started off with Thomson Reuters, I would say about a year ago. One of the things that we do in my organization, my group in particular, is every time we have an idea, we actually test this idea with customers. This one happened to be actually many, many different customers. So Dan, why don't I let you walk through this?
Okay. Can you hear me good? Perfect. So this application, once we showed Thomson Reuters, a financial content provider, our Project Blue Spruce technology, they basically said, let's try this out in a scenario. So as David pointed out in an earlier slide, this is an example of a purpose-built application on that meeting spectrum that he showed you. This application, while purpose-built, what I mean by that, it's already pre-laid out. The content domain is already predefined. And in the case of Reuters, every one of these widgets here are essentially encapsulations of content services from Reuters using RSS, Atom, XMPP push, essentially a lot of the Web 2.0 technologies we're all familiar with. What you're seeing here is a nice example, in addition to be Web 2.0 enabled, leveraging a lot of the OpenAjax standards like OpenAjax Hub and the OpenAjax metadata specification. You're seeing a very rich composite web application. Not only is it wired, as David pointed out, as a mashup, but as we go along this demonstration, I can actually click on articles here, and every one of the widgets are all CoWeb enabled. They're using our cooperative web API that comes with Project Blue Spruce. So you're seeing in the upper left-hand corner not only video capture in semi-HD or HD, you're also seeing streaming video over the web. And this should be coming up on your side now too.
They're quick, easy, and cheap.
I'll put that on pause here so we can actually hear the speakers. But you get the idea. You're seeing a very rich application, video capture, live, streaming video, simultaneous interactions from both participants, in this case David and myself, and then as well as push technology giving us real-time stock quotes. Again, this is purpose-built, and as David goes along, we'll actually show another flavor here where you can actually be more ad hoc and less confined to your domain layout as you have in this example. David?
Thank you, Dan. One thing to note, by the way, is all the audio and video is actually coming through the web streaming. There is no telecommunications other than phone lines or something like that here. What we'll do now is we'll go to telemedicine light, Dan. So the next demonstration of technology actually was triggered off by working with radiologists from the Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. And one of the first things that goes on in radiology is everyone huddles in a very dark room. Okay, it used to be dark, very dark because of the X-rays in the white shadow boxes. What they now do is they have kind of like half light. Now, one of the things that happens is we basically are looking at a CT scan, and as I have the box over it, what you're looking at is a computer enhancement of that. Now, one of the things that is really important to do is to start thinking about can I actually start sharing basically information with somebody else on issues that might be there. And this is actually very key. Can I also start, figuring out what the distance is for tumors? Okay? And can I start sharing that information with a second party, like Dan in this case? Okay? One of the key things that's happening here is Dan and I are basically working. You're seeing me in red, him in blue. As we're starting to do this, you can start basically sharing this kind of information. Now, what we're doing is we created basically a layer right on top of the actual CT image, which is in this case is a JPEG. And as that basically layer is, that metadata then can get saved off on the side. As, by the way, so can the audio and the video in anything happening in the web browser, which is actually key. Dan's now drawing basically circles. So Dan, let's move on to squares. So one of the other applications we worked on, and this actually is used by our group to start thinking about how we all can work together. Now, how many people in the room remember a very old TV show called Hollywood Squares? Okay, well, meet Hollywood Squares in 2009, where basically I can get together with many of folks. Now, while we're talking about this, what we are not in Blue Spruce is a replacement for what people would call WebEx type communication. That's very much a publishing paradigm. What we are is more of a work group. Now, why do I say we're a work group and we can't grow to 100 or 1,000 users is our video and audio actually goes point to point.